To continue our celebration of October, of the spooky and the scary, in this video what I wanted to do is actually share with you the 5 most horrific or just terrible vault experiments to happen in the Fallout universe. The vaults are really a cornerstone of many of the Fallout games. For several of them, you start out in the vault, and that's really what defines your initial experience. But as you quickly learn while playing these games, even though at first glance a vault seems like it was just a secure area to protect people from the nuclear blast, there's actually oftentimes a lot more going on, something a bit darker and a bit more sinister. So for this video, across all of the various Fallout games, I'm going to be discussing the 5 that are the worst, that really rank as just the most horrific out there. But before that, I do want to share a word from today's video sponsor. For those that don't know, Raid Shadow Legends is a brand new collection RPG game that is taking the mobile game landscape by storm. More than 10 million players worldwide have already downloaded the game in less than 6 months. So what does Raid offer that's making it so appealing? Some of my favorite features are things like the fully voiced story campaign, but also the ability for you to just play for 5 minutes or several hours in a given session, with one of the best parts of all being it's totally free to play. In Raid, you have the ability to personally customize your champions, choosing their artifacts and creating a unique mystery build for each one of them. But you don't just have to take my word for how good this game is, as it already has 300,000 reviews and almost a perfect score in the Play Store. For those of you that have maybe played Raid in the past, the highly anticipated new Faction Wars feature is now live in game. But if you're a new player, there's also a new player program, where you can get a new daily login reward for the first 90 days in the game. You can go to the video description now, click on these special links, and you'll get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion shard as part of the new player program to start your journey in Raid. But then taking a look at the first vault on this list, we're moving over to Fallout 3, the game that introduced many of us to this franchise in the first place. Despite this being Bethesda's first game, they definitely weren't holding back when it came to some of those pretty horrible vault experiments. At first glance, Vault 92 just seemed like another vault that was trying to preserve the talent of America. Inducted into this vault were the talented and prolific musicians of the area. They were told they were being invited to the vault in order to preserve their musical talent. And through some of the terminal entries, you could find that many of the inhabitants were excited to be in this vault with these others. They found themselves flourishing, being able to prosper and build off of each other, learning new skills from their peers. The layout of the vault is a rather common one that has many of the typical facilities, but also special recording studios and a whole subsection dedicated to this. Naturally, with a bunch of musicians, you want to give them avenues and outlets to actually express themselves. Except this is actually where this horrifying vault experiment takes place. You see, Vault-Tec's plan wasn't actually to preserve the musicians of America, but rather to brainwash them. In these otherwise soundproof recording areas, there were speakers installed that would play a very slight white noise. This was an attempt by Vault-Tec in order to use subliminal messaging to actually brainwash these musicians and eventually turn them into super soldiers. The musicians were targeted because they would naturally want to spend a lot of time together in these rooms where this noise would be played. Over time, they actually expanded the speaker system to be all throughout the vault, including in some of their bedrooms, so the noise was just constantly there in the background. As you find the vault in Fallout 3, you can see it turned into a war zone. Many of these musicians slowly went insane. You could see this even in some of the terminal entries, and even though this program was meant to create controllable soldiers, over time it just turned many of them into insane soldiers. People are described as going on rampages, taking numerous shots to take down, and the vault eventually devolved into people fending off the crazies, as they were described. In a way, it feels like the experiment in this vault feels a little bit worse because they did focus and actually target people with such great talent, all just because they knew they would want to spend time in those soundproof chambers, giving the mind control tactics an even more effective approach. But a vault that I would actually say is a little bit worse is Vault 75, located in Fallout 4's Commonwealth. This vault isn't immediately obvious. It's actually located under the Malden Middle School. At first glance, this just seems like a typical middle school. It has a classroom, as well as some of the other storage areas, but as you work your way to the lower level, you find a jail door, which is definitely not a good sign, and in the basement of this middle school, a vault was constructed. Vault-Tec wanted Vault 75 to appear like a safe haven, them doing a kind gesture for the community in case of a true nuclear attack. Vault-Tec chose to work together with the middle school itself, inducting many of the students of the school and actually subsidizing the costs for their families to allow everyone anyone to actually get in. At face value, it seemed like they were doing a truly good thing, building a vault right under a middle school, so in case anything happened, they just literally had to walk downstairs. But in reality, what went on within this vault was much darker. Upon the bombs actually dropping and everyone being entered into the vault, families were immediately separated and segmented off. The children selected for this program were taken into one room, while the families were actually just murdered. Vault-Tec had no use for them, they disposed of their bodies accordingly, and actually had certain programs for comforting some of these children now that they literally just lost their parents. As the true goal of Vault 75 was actually to find perfect human genetics, to actually train a group of super soldiers and then harvest them, hopefully giving you the ability to have perfect soldiers in the future. Within the vault, you could find many facilities akin to actually improving the students' aptitude in various physical tasks, whether it be just some typical workout equipment or even other things like shooting ranges to try and create that perfect soldier. Once these students reached age 18, a graduation was held. This was meant to be a very ritualistic ceremony and really a big deal in the vault. Even though nearly all students were able to attend the graduation, following the graduation, one of three things would happen. If your performance scores were too low, you were just disposed of. If you did have good scores, depending on how you scored, you were either recruited to be part of the scientist team that were actually running these experiments, or alternatively, your genetics were harvested. And it appears that even by those who were successful, who did have adequate scores, after the genetics were harvested, they seemingly were also disposed of. Following that, you had a new batch of students with their new genetic improvements, and then you would run the process over and over again, with the idea that under constant refinement, you would eventually develop the perfect super soldier. So obviously this one is pretty bad, especially when you consider the facade that this was meant to be a safe place, Vault-Tec appealing to some of the local families that, yeah, we're gonna keep you safe also. While in reality, those people were all almost immediately killed, with the children later just being trained and then harvested. So obviously thus far, a theme with pretty much all of the vaults is some kind of really messed up experimentation. And although nearly all of the time this is immensely immoral, unethical, and pretty horrific in general, at the same time there could be that argument, at least from Vault-Tec, that it was betterment of science. You were trying to understand things in a post-apocalyptic setting. Well, except with Vault 12 from Fallout 1. Vault 12, similar to some of these other vaults, was located under a city. And this vault was actually better prepared than many. It was state-of-the-art, even being given the prestigious pressed vault suit for just their attention to preparedness. It seemed like this would be a genuinely safe shelter, one of the better ones even out of the vault program. Yet the experiment of this vault really was almost non-existent. Despite this being such a well-prepared and well-suited vault for protection, it was designed such that when the bombs did drop and all the people rushed into the vault, the door would never close. Vault-Tec described how they wanted to study the effects of radiation on the populace, but naturally almost immediately following this, everyone was ghoulified. That's how you find them in Fallout 1, and in fact, most of these people actually just left the vault altogether, many's fate being sealed by the impact of the radiation. And to me, this one really is so evil because it was a perfectly working shelter, yet the whole thing was built with the idea of never saving anyone. Although going back into Fallout 4, Vault 95 was another pretty horrific one. A lot of people are probably aware of this vault and some of the quests that are held here, but I don't think many know the entire backstory. So Vault 95 actually was a pretty great vault, especially starting off. Unlike some of the other vaults that took in very well equipped people or those who were extremely talented to preserve them, Vault 95 actually took in what was otherwise described as a lower class of citizen, those who were extremely addicted to chems and had a serious problem in that area. They didn't discriminate, it was all kinds of chem addicts in this vault, but what might actually surprise many is in Vault 95 they treated these people. There was a state-of-the-art rehabilitation facility within, and with them being stuck in the vault, it was a great way to actually shake that chem addiction and become a better person. And for 5 years that was true. Nearly everyone in the vault found success from this program, and it actually was just a pretty happy place. Although one of the people in this vault actually wasn't addicted to chems, but rather it was a mole emplaced by Vault-Tec. The plan here was 5 years after the vault door did close, they were meant to reveal a secret stash of chems, a lifetime supply of all kinds of different things that was stored within this vault. Almost immediately the vault imploded. There were some holdouts, some of those who were actually sticking to the rehab program and managed to not break, but some others couldn't resist the urge urge, and that's a big part of how you actually find the vault when you go to it. The interior is destroyed, many falling to a fate that naturally would come with getting a lifetime supply of a previous addiction, and over time as the effects of some of those chems kicked in, many just tore each other apart. There are some terminals of a couple of holdouts that try to resist the urge at least initially, but basically everyone in this vault eventually caved, and in the end it doesn't really seem like there were any survivors. But then last but not least, we have what many describe as the worst Vault-Tec experiment. Bringing us to the Mojave, we do have Vault 11. So at first glance, Vault 11 just seemed like a pretty typical vault. It was going to house people from the local area from the bombs dropping. But after the vault door closed and everyone was trapped inside, they were actually described their directive. The automated computers explained that in Vault 11, every year they have to pick a sacrifice. Somebody who will be sacrificed to the vault, and if they don't, all of the life support systems within the vault will be disabled, meaning the eventual end of everyone inside. Upon entering the vault, the only person who actually knew of the true purpose of this vault was the Vault 11 Overseer. When the residents found this out, they actually elected him as the initial sacrifice. Under the Overseer's desk, you could actually find the sacrificial chamber that has its own custom audio to go along with the process that basically does occur next.
Congratulations, Martyr. Your fantastic journey is only just beginning. Please proceed to the light.
Following this initial sacrifice of the Overseer out of frustration, it became tradition in Vault 11 that whoever was elected Overseer by the people would always be the person to get sacrificed. They would serve their year as Overseer and then they would meet their fate. With this now being a democratic decision where everyone can vote independently on who they want to be the next Overseer and thus the next sacrifice, we did see the rising of several voting blocks in Vault 11. Communities that would vote a certain way, ensuring their own protection. Some of these became extremely powerful, basically ensuring that nobody from within their own community would ever actually get selected as Overseer and never have to be sacrificed. But they definitely abused this power. It's described how the most powerful community actually went to one of the women in the vault and said if she doesn't perform certain favors for that community, they'll actually elect her husband to be the Overseer. So naturally, not wanting that to happen, she obliged, but in the end, they actually elected her husband anyway, despite the favors being delivered. Following this, the wife actually began to stalk and kill the members of that community. You could find some of their bodies scattered around this. Eventually she was caught and confessed, basically describing that they should pick her as the next Overseer as it is a better choice. And then when she became Overseer, she actually decided that the choice should no longer be democratic, but actually just automated and random. This tore the vault apart. With this new directive, there would be no voting or no control by the people. It would just be one day someone was chosen. This led to infighting and the eventual implosion of this vault, which in the end actually left just 5 survivors, whose holotape you could find while entering the vault.
Are we really gonna do this? It's open, we could just leave.
I couldn't, not after that.
We don't deserve to leave. A shining example. That's what it called us. But we did what we were supposed to. Not by a long shot. Anybody would have done what we did.
You ask me? That's exactly the problem. Now let's get on with this.
I'll go first. Wait. People should know what happened. They could learn from it. If there's anyone out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Yeah. No, wait!
So if it wasn't clear from that, the real vault experiment here was that you could A, sacrifice somebody, but alternatively, if you chose to not sacrifice anyone from the vault, it was described how you were a shining example to humanity, and rather than all of the life support systems being turned off, they would be able to freely enter or exit the vault, having their own safe space in the Mojave. By the time of the final 5, they were so ashamed of what they had done, the group unanimously just decided to end it all. But by the time of that final holotape, some people people were having second doubts, but the rest of the group wasn't okay with it, and then you hear the final shootout. Vault 11 seems to be one of the worst of the vault experiments, partly just because of how many people were lost in the process, but also just the experiment itself. It had a secret happy ending. People could have lived prosperously, but under the fear of outright destruction, you saw the abuse of power, manipulation, and eventually the implosion of the vault overall. So yeah, that is a look at probably what are the top 5 most horrifying vault experiments to go on in the Fallout universe. There's actually a lot of other pretty bad ones out there, but I chose these 5 as I really thought they stood out as the worst among all of them. If you guys enjoy this type of content, you can leave a like or subscribe. I have some more scary or spooky stuff coming for the month of October. With all that being said, again, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.